and you're watching a B2B Marketing Now podcast, a show where I invite the great marketing and business minds to join the conversation on what's shaping the year of transition. This episode is brought to you by my friends and partners, Poster.com. Together we create the best B2B podcasts. They're great professionals at what they do. If you have a podcast strategy in mind, check them out and get in touch. And today my guest is Vuk Zlatorov, a CEO of Creative, a co-founder of Poster.com, a host of the Change Officer podcast series, an entrepreneur in Dubai, and a great personality who managed to scale up his business during pandemic. Hi Vuk, it is so great to have you as my guest on my podcast, finally.
Yes.
Can I call you a serial entrepreneur? And what do you put actually into that word, into that meaning?
Can you call me a serial entrepreneur? Well, it's a big word, but I guess you could call me a serial entrepreneur, yes.
Absolutely. Like, how many businesses do you have now?
Well, at the moment, 3.
Absolutely. So I know Poster.com, I know Creative, and I know Evans Media, where you're also cooperating with. So entrepreneurship in UAE is a pretty tough place to be at some point. And I want to give you actually a chance now to introduce yourself, how you would position or introduce yourself to your clients, prospects, to your potential customers.
Look, it's actually that's one of the more difficult questions for me, and that I do have to answer quite often. And because of so many things that are going on at the same time, I'm always finding it difficult to really pitch myself quickly, because there are a couple of different things going on. And then usually what I do is, depending on who am I speaking with, I'm picking my weapons. But in general, just for the sake of this podcast, I can give a brief intro of a couple of things that I'm doing at the moment. My core business, and where most of my time is going, is Creative, which is a digital product. You can call it an agency or a consultancy or a company, but in essence, what we do, we build custom tailor-made digital products, whether that's a mobile application or a software or a business application, pretty much anything. That's what I've been doing since the day one of my career, since I graduated actually, till today. And then in the meantime, I started a couple of different ventures out of fun. Some of them turned to be successful businesses, some of them failed miserably. But at the moment, a lot of my time is going on a podcast as well. So I'm hosting the Change Officer podcast. On the back of that, we started a video podcast production company, Poster.com, that is helping people launch their own podcasts. In the meantime, we started a couple of startups as well. My Singapore office is currently at the stage of raising Series A for a digital wallet as a service, Holy Wally. Here in UAE, we are engaged in 2 more startups in property industry and education industry. So yeah, quite a lot of things going on, but in essence, most of them are related to technology.
That sounds like a lot of work to do, and I'm absolutely amazed when people are actually taking their energy and taking their efforts without fear, probably taking into account some risks, but they are going into those projects, into new projects. So that's why I'm probably so very much interested in your personality. But I would like to turn our conversation a little bit. Let me start with saying that people do not like other people's success stories.
People don't like other people's success stories.
And it's not because of the ego. The issue is not because of the ego. The thing with the success stories is that they normally are too perfect. When we hear somebody's success story, it's like it's too perfect. And the real life is not. And the modern marketing, by the way, requires us as marketers to find the ways to bring a lot more human connection into what brands communicate. And one of the ways is actually to tell a true story. So there's a saying that a good content is not a good storytelling. It's telling a true story well. So I'd like us to focus on your backstage story,
No, right.
on the story of setbacks that brought you where you are, that gave you the lessons, that is going to be quite valuable for the audience who is thinking about their own side hustle or permanent business. So how about that?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. And I think it's important because we are living in the age where media is so developed and there is so much content out there. But most of the content that is being published is published either by businesses or individuals who want to position themselves as best as they can. And that leads us to a place where there is a lot of exaggerated or improved pictures of businesses and individuals that makes the rest of the people think that everyone is perfect and everyone is successful, which is leading, I guess, to a lot of depression as well. People being unsatisfied with their own careers because they think that everyone around them is just making, doing great and have achieving a lot of successes. When you look at me, probably from the surface, someone would say, wow, as you say, serial entrepreneur. When you tell me like that, I'm feeling like, yeah, come on, that sounds too good, but it's far from that. I mean, serial entrepreneur. In the back, really, is just now 10 years of suffering.
Oh, really?
Really hard work, a lot of stress that I am sure at one stage of my life will surface up. Probably after some 50s, I will see the results of what I've been through together with people that I worked. So it wasn't that nice at all.
The question is, did you come to your own business from day one, or have you ever had a regular job like I would say 80% of the planet do? Have you ever had a job that you quit, for example, to start your own business, or how did it happen that you came into your own business?
Not really. I did have a job. Actually, I did have a job and a salary when I was during summer of 2000 and maybe 11 or something. No, even before that. When I was in US for a work and travel program as a student. So I was driving a taxi and I was getting a salary for that. That was a nice job at the time.
Yeah, I believe so.
I made decent money at the time, but then I came back. I graduated, and two of my friends from college already started a company 2 years before me because they were 2 years older. And when I graduated, they asked me to join, and that was pretty much the moment I jumped into entrepreneurship. We came here to Dubai later on. Started the business here. We set up the Singapore office after that. So I never really had a typical 9-to-5 job. I never prepared my CV. I never had a CV, which sounds now romantic, but it's not really like that.
Has it ever been scary to you? Has it ever sort of made you feel uncomfortable? Have you actually thought about, did you have any second thoughts about having a regular job, especially here in Dubai? As I said, your own business is a pretty tough space to be here in Dubai, and for many, many different reasons. And you can mention to me, so you can probably tell me what are the key challenges of having your own business here in UAE. But I want to ask you, have you ever had those thoughts? Why don't I just get that regular job that would bring me a monthly salary, and I just forget about my own business?
Well, look, most of the entrepreneurs out there publicly would say no, of course not. But the truth is, most of the people at some point think about that. When you're running your own business, especially when you're growing it in regions which are very competitive, where you need to work really hard and have a really good service or product to succeed, there are times where you feel desperate and you think, all right, where is this really leading me, and does this make sense at all? Why don't I just get a job 9-to-5? Don't think about it. And I always thought it would be so cool to have, like, to freeze everything on a couple of months, just have a job, just to see how it is, just to have some rest. Just to see whether, like, those, like, people who are maybe working 9-to-5, after 5 they're just like relaxed. But probably the fact is nobody is, like, whether you have a job or you're an entrepreneur, if you love what you do and if you're passionate about it, whether you have a job or not, you're thinking about it all the time. So yes, these things did cross my mind, but at the end, I never got anywhere close to deciding to look for a job, because what you're getting out of entrepreneurship is like, people are comparing it with gambling as well, and that feeling of potential win when you're putting your bet on, you know, on red on roulette, for example, and while that ball is spinning, that feeling that you might win.
Oh.
That what gets under your skin and your blood, and whether you won or you lost, but let's say you won, the moment you won, that feeling is gone. And that's why serial entrepreneurs usually go for another business, because they're just continuously chasing the feeling of potentially winning and building something new. And I guess that's it.
That brings me to my next question, or actually to develop this thought a little bit, because you mentioned passion here. So there's a saying about successful business owners, is that you see doors where others see walls. Has it always been this case? Have you always seen doors where others saw walls? Or what are those moments when you're lost and when you don't know if your idea is right? And how do you handle that? How do you handle that feeling? And how do you handle that situation? And how do you jump to the next stage and still push through?
Yeah. Well, probably people who have more of an entrepreneurial spirit see more doors than walls, but it's not always like that. You know, we're not talking about extremes. It's either this or that. Probably I saw doors, or I'm ready to see a door where some people, or most of the people, won't be willing to to see the door. But it really comes down to the individual. Whether you're an entrepreneur or you work for a business, it comes down to the individual.
Yeah. So, and you probably partially mentioned this, but I want to highlight it a little bit more. So, go until you fail and then keep going. There's another saying about, you know, business owners. So, what was that? Or can you give me an example of a couple of moments when you really felt, man, that doesn't work. I have to change something, or I have to forget this idea. I have to jump into another project, or whatever. A moment where you felt not lost, but you felt that you failed here. So you just have to change something. It has to be a turning point, and you still kept going. Can you give me a couple of examples?
Yeah, I think that's the essential part of any business. And there is a lot of talk about embracing failure, and everyone is talking about it. But walking the talk is a completely different story, when you really have to embrace failure and say, okay, let's just keep moving. Patience plays a very important role. Patience and belief, that you truly believe in what you're doing, and that eventually results will come. So with creative, since we started a long way back, we've been through so many different phases. We never completely failed, but we were so many times very close to completely failing. And every time something like that happened, you know, we were just getting, I was lucky that I have a lot of partners. We were just getting together and trying to figure the next step, because we were always moved and inspired by the thought that one day we'll create a global company, and one day we'll be proud about that. So I guess, you know, whenever that moment comes that you've either failed or you're very close to failing, and you hate your life and you're just waking up in the morning and you don't want to get out of your bed, you know, after the rain comes the sun. And that's what I always remind myself. No matter how bad it is, I know that in a couple of days, very often it's just in a couple of days, sun will come. And then I'm like, okay, just survive, push through these couple of days, and then the sun will come. And that always happens. That always happens.
What do you call a failure anyway in your own business? Is it something like screwing up a customer case, or not getting a business, or not getting your marketing right, or hiring people and then understanding that your project is not working? So what are the, the most typical things that prevent businesses from scaling up?
Well, first of all, the idea of a failure is something that you can look from a couple of different angles. You can say that you failed, and that's okay. A lot of people are accepting that they failed, but that's not really helping you build your mental strength and your attitude towards work. So it's better that you look at that failure as an experience. Yes, you did fail, but at least now you know that something like that doesn't work. So you are smarter than you were yesterday. So as long as you are repeating that cycle, at least after 10 years of failures, you're ahead of someone who didn't try all of these things throughout those 10 years. So if you look at it like that, you actually progressed, so you didn't fail. So I'm trying to look at life and business like that. And now when we're talking to startups and companies that we work with, I like to say that we bring the experience of failing for the previous 10 years, which is actually great because we know a lot of things that you shouldn't do. So that's how I try to look at failures.
I'm sure it probably makes you so much mature in the stage when you are really feeling that you're grown up as a business, and you've got all those experiences as lessons that you've learned, and you're not probably looking at them as failures anymore. It's just something that makes you stronger, right?
Definitely. And I think that in most of the cases, you're not even aware how important that experience is, especially when you're surrounded with people who are living their lives the similar way, and then you don't really see a big difference. But as soon as you leave that circle of or that ecosystem or that community or a group of people, and you put yourself in a different group of people who are coming from a completely different world, you see a major difference. And sometimes that's important. I think in general, it's important to switch dimensions and to switch environment just so that you can see the amount of progress that you are making, which is difficult to see when you're always surrounded with same people.
That's true. So what would you advise to those who is in the stage of still looking for that stable stage when you start actually scaling up? So you're not jumping in your growth dramatically right away, but you're still you're probably very stable in your own business, but you're still not there when you start growing. So what would you advise to those people who actually feel every failure as a failure yet? So how do they keep up the spirits?
Well, other than the story about failures that I said already, I think patience is really important. But patience is not going to help you if you're patient with something that doesn't really make sense.
Right.
So I guess you want to revisit what you're doing in the first place and make sure that you do believe in it. Try to validate it as much as possible so you at least know that you're confident that you are delivering some value and results. And then patience and trying to accelerate the process of trying out different things. So we've tried out so many different things, and I'm not really happy with the pace that we achieved. So sometimes it took us quite a lot of time to understand that we are making a mistake. So the faster you can be with trying out new things that can potentially improve your business and help you scale, and realizing as soon as possible whether this is helping you or giving you results or not, the faster you will reach the stage where you actually hit that, one thing that is going to be that one drop to really help you exponentially scale.
That actually brings me to the next part. I'd like to talk a little bit more about your business. So you're in the space of digital solutions for businesses. How did you come up to the idea of the business? I think a lot of people who would like to start their own businesses not necessarily always understand the final idea. I mean, how difficult it is to firm up the business idea, to verify that this business idea is right. How soon do we need to review and change that or completely modify it? So I'd like to hear your opinion on that. And because you mentioned that you've tried so many things, so that would be interesting to hear.
So creative is not what is considered by today's standards a startup, typical startup. We didn't come up with some idea or a product and we built an app. So we were service providing business. So we straight out of college, we just got together and said, okay, what can we do? What can we sell to the market? There was a couple of them knowing to program, building websites, designers. We got together, we set up a company, started selling websites. I mean, that's not a next level idea or something that can be a unicorn one day. Now, if you ask me whether I would start creative 10 years ago again, I would have to think about it carefully. The great thing that came out of creative is the enormous amount of experience, relationships, and projects that we did, which is giving us a great starting point for what we're trying to do now, which is continuously launching new startups. We're in the process of setting up a small startup studio where we'll be working with founders and startups in helping them build new revolutionary digital products. Yeah, I think that, creative 10 years ago, probably I would start it again because I know what I learned for the previous 10 years. But whether that business model was the ideal, no. Because we were starting a business which was ran by, thousands of others at the time.
So it was
already
saturated.
The market was saturated. Yes, back in Serbia when we started, we were quite good, so we quickly grew. But then we came in Dubai, a very expensive city, with a lot of competition. Margins in our business are not significant. So when you think of it like that, why would you start a business like that? Why don't you come up with something that is a lot more niche, maybe focused, with bigger margins, less competition, and without so high overheads? But at the same time, 10 years down the road, we learned a lot that can be now applicable to other businesses. And if you think that you're going to create a business over a couple of years, that's not true.
Yeah, so you really have to. Yeah, you have to dedicate your time.
Takes a lot of time. Yeah. But for anyone out there trying to start a business, I guess, if you already have a luxury or a chance to start a business from scratch, why don't you just think about something that you won't be in a place where you need to compete with a lot of people and prove why are you better than someone else. Try to find something where you don't really have a lot of competition, where you have a very strong edge that is helping you position yourself as a leader.
Absolutely. So you need to find a niche which has got a great demand, but undersaturated from services perspective. And I think that's the biggest sort of skill that businesses need to master, to find those niches. And my question to you here: do you think you can sort of train somebody to do their own business in the right way, or is it something that people learn themselves? They have to get through their own experiences to be able to jump into whatever is comfortable for them.
Well, you're asking about running and starting your own business as a founder, as an entrepreneur. Yeah. Well, there are skills that come handy that you can teach people.
Yeah.
And that I wish my university gave me a better lesson about. At the time, now when I look back, I'm like, now it would be a great time to go back to university and study all of these classes that I had. About the economy, about marketing, processes. At the time, I didn't have a clue about it. I was like, what are you talking about? I was just trying to pass the exam. I didn't understand anything. But now when I think about it, it was great, but it was delivered in the wrong way. So I think you can help people a lot by teaching them some skills in a practical way. But finding that inner drive to start your own business and to become an entrepreneur, that's probably something that you are either born with or you develop it over years. You're that type of person. It's not something that you can really learn necessarily. So it's kind of half.
So I found a wonderful quote from CEO of Yahoo, Melissa Meyer, and she said something like, "I always did something I was a little not ready to do." I think this is how you grow. When that moment, I'm not really sure I can do that, you push that through moment, and that's when you have your breakthrough. So what do you think about that? Have you always been ready for what you started?
That's definitely a spot on quote. I cannot say that I'm that type of a person. I have a partner who is that type of a person, who's just jumping into these, opportunities and getting himself in the environments which he is far from ready, but they shape him, and somehow he figures things out, and then he just progresses. And it's great that I have someone like him next to me. I am somewhere in between. So I'm not a complete, I'm not playing it safe, but I'm far from playing it super risky. But I'm somewhere in the middle, and how I describe what she is saying, I call it the roller coaster effect. And that's so if you've ever been to these parks, adrenaline parks, and you need to get into a roller coaster, and it looks terrifying, and you're like, I'm not going to survive this. But then you say, all right, how hard can it be for me just to sit in the car? Like, that's not terrifying, it's not frightening. So I just sit in the car, I put the lock down, but after that, there is nothing that I can do, because the train is going to start, and like, okay, that's it, I'm on the ride. So that's what I try to do in life and business as well.
The small steps.
You just, get out on the stage, and then no, there's no going back. Like, I need to start talking about something. So that's how I started the podcast as well, which completely turned my life upside down. So completely changed my life over the previous 1 year. I
want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Podstar and the whole podcast story, because it's amazing. I think it's just something that it is so bold. And so I love your answer about the small steps. So if you're not prepared to risk, do the small steps, just something that doesn't scare you. But the only choice that you have is either act or you don't. Right?
Well, look, I really think that you cannot advance as a person or as a professional if you're not taking some risks, or if you're not doing things that are not comfortable. Staying in a comfort zone is okay if you're okay with staying where you are for the rest of your life, and not really progressing, not as a professional necessarily, as an individual, as a personality. So and with risk comes a reward. The higher the risk is, the bigger the reward is, and the bigger potential loss is. But
absolutely,
that's the game. So I think that's really, really important.
Great. I want to also speak a little bit about the part when you mentioned that if you were to sort of get any education that would help you now in your own business, you would probably train or teach or learn yourself some of the skills. And that's where I would like to talk a little bit about the role of marketing in scaling up your business. So because marketing is a knowledge, is a skill, it's a huge ecosystem of different platforms now, very much linked to technology as well, and also strategy, a lot of understanding of what you can do for what money, what kind of results and outcomes it's going to bring you as a business. So my question to you would be, so as a marketer, for example, I know that for growing businesses, it's probably one of the ultimate goals is to set up your marketing activities in the way that you create that awareness, or to create that situation when it's not who you know, it's who knows you and who reaches out to you to do business with you, to do inquiry, to ask you about something. And when you're at the growing stage, you as a CEO have to cover your marketing activities yourself. And that's an interesting part. When do you start investing into your marketing separately. When do you think you have to cover it yourself, and how do you treat marketing in that situation? So I'd be interested to hear about that.
All right. First, to address your first part of the question, I think marketing is very often confused with advertising, which are not which are not the same things. I think marketing is important in a bigger scheme of things, in true meaning of its word, which is marketing your product, positioning your product, going into the market and your go-to-market strategy and customer acquisition and all of these important parts, especially being emphasized now in digital, where there is a lot of products being launched daily, monthly, that are fighting to acquire customers and so on. So some of these skills can be, most of the skills can be learned. Some of them can be learned maybe early in the career or even while you're studying, but most of them are gained and learned through experience, I guess. And I think that the importance of marketing is uncomparable with anything else. One thing is having a good product. Completely a different thing is actually marketing that product in the market and actually selling it. So that part is like I'd say that is super important. When it comes to our marketing activities, I can say that I'm really proud of what we did so far, because for the previous 10 years that we've been operating, we tried a bunch of different things, from digital marketing, relationship-based marketing, this marketing and that marketing. But what completely changed the game was when I started podcast.
Amazing.
Especially in our industry, where we are still in service providing, most of the business that we were getting was coming through relationships, and it was a referral-based marketing. At one part of the journey, we were investing a lot in digital, but that wasn't really bringing in high quality leads. We were just getting a lot of leads and a lot of business that was not really what we were looking for.
What particularly were you doing in digital space? I just want to go a little bit more granular into marketing so that we could understand how do you combine different tactics and what do businesses, for example, start with normally without any big risk to invest a little bit more. They start doing something and they're probably not getting what they want. After 3 years, they're not getting what they want, and they will be like, well, somehow our marketing doesn't work. So I want to hear that one. I want to hear that part, because you're accepting the fact that you were investing into digital. I want to know, what did you do in terms of the digital, right? Before you started doing
it was so our background was at one part of the journey we were providing social media and digital advertising services. So naturally we were doing it for ourselves, and it was a multi-channel approach, so covering all different social media platforms, Google Ads and stuff like that, with a website that was optimized with analytics and with a funnel and blah 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 and all of these moving parts. So at that stage of our company, where we were still serving a certain part of the piece of the market, it was performing okay. But as we were kind of progressing and as we started working with larger names and enterprise level companies, we learned that these are not the people that are going out on Google to find you, really, or they're not really clicking on the direct ads. These are the people that you are building your relationship with on the longer run. And yes, you can do it with digital marketing as well, but it's a different type of marketing where you're continuously educating them on yourself and on the industry and the service that you're providing, so that eventually that brand awareness leads them to you. But no matter how much we were investing in digital marketing of that kind and advertising, most of the biggest deals and clients were coming through our relationship. So we spent tens of thousands of dollars in 1 month on digital marketing and advertising, and then I go out one evening and I just meet a friend, and he introduced me to another friend, and we close a deal that is covering the year of investing in digital marketing. So, but then, coming from Serbia to Dubai and then Singapore, young, I had to grow my beard so I look older and so on. But it's not that easy to build relationships with people that you want to.
I know what you're saying.
You can't just show up and have, hey, hi, I have this amazing company and this is what we do. I want to hang out and I want to do business with you.
Absolutely.
Even if you don't want to do business, even if you just want to hang out with them, it's challenging. And I understand why. I completely understand why. So for the previous, for the first 8 or 9 years, we were really struggling to scale this whole part of building relationships. Yes, building 1, 2, or 3 a year. All right, you can do it. But how do I build continuously relevant and meaningful relationships in which I enjoy, which are also, helping me grow as an individual, as a professional? We were joining different clubs, networking events, blah, blah, blah. But especially in Dubai, you know how they are. You end up, talking to a lot of people who are also trying to sell you something, and then you all end up selling each other your services, but nobody really there to create a long-lasting or a meaningful relationship. And that's how we completely, accidentally started recording podcast.
I think so the message that you are actually delivering here, it is totally amazing, because you are saying here, how do you take this relationship building in the real life and transfer it into an online space? How do you do that? What is the way to bring that human connection, human relationship building process into a digital space? And as you fairly mentioned, the digital marketing and its advertising, for example, function, or even the content marketing probably doesn't help right away, because it's a lot of efforts and it's a lot of investments and not always probably justified by the outcome that you're getting.
And I'm not saying not saying that it doesn't work. It works on the long run. Absolutely. And you need to be careful how are you doing it.
Exactly. So that's the turning point when you probably found the way how to bring up the relationship building and a human connection into the digital or online space, and that is the podcast. So that's why it probably worked well. Can you please tell me the story how you started it? And when have you decided to invest into that? Because it's an investment, right? And you have to be consciously aware that it's an additional investment towards what you're doing. Did you reinvest? Did you stop something and started to do, or did you just risk?
So we had a group of people coming from different businesses that we hang around. Work together on several of these ventures that we mentioned before, and we are always trying to hack things. We are always trying to find a shortcut for something that we are doing and kind of trick the system. And we were never happy with the options that we had for our marketing positioning, building relationships, and eventually, getting deals and growing your business. And we were always looking for the way, how can we, we don't have a ridiculous amount of money to put into this. We don't really like putting tens of thousands of dollars in marketing, and then on the long run, blah, blah, blah. So because a very good partner of mine, Ivan, who is running a video production company, he's just crazy about content and video production. He had all of this equipment that we are using at the moment, and he was like, "Hey man, why don't you just recording a podcast?" He was already doing something on his own. He was recording himself all the time, and he was like, "Why don't we just start recording podcast and see where that goes?" It wasn't really a big of an investment from our side because he had all of the equipment, we had time, we had the office space. Either way, we are talking with a lot of people, having meetings here. Why don't we just record them and start sharing that content online? And that's how it started. But then when it started, we realized that actually podcast as a platform is a lot more genuine, honest, and natural way to invite someone to talk to them than inviting them to talk about business. Nobody likes to be sold to, if you know what I mean. Nobody likes to be approached with a service and be pitched with a service that you want to sell them. But everyone likes a genuine conversation where at the end of the day, both sides are gaining value because of the publicity, promotion, and everyone likes to be at the end of the day, under the spotlight and to be asked questions for the change. Because if you noticed, we're living in a world where everyone likes to talk about themselves, but not a lot of people are asking questions. So when you offer someone to be a guest on the podcast, ask them questions sincerely about them and about what they do, usually people tend to say yes. And then you have the 60 minutes that you spend with them talking on a level which would probably be very difficult to reach in any other way, given that you just met each other. But in a podcast, you have the freedom to ask questions. You probably won't ask them just on the street if you met them in a lift, on an elevator. And after those 60 minutes of recording, naturally you build a very intimate relationship, which leads to building your both personal and later on professional relationship that eventually one way or another leads to business, because we are all living in that time and that type of a city at the moment where at the end of the day it's all about business. And when we figured that out, things completely changed, and we actually figured out that we hacked the system that we were trying to hack.
So you managed to find that format that allowed you to build relationship in a scalable format. Let's put it this way, right? And I think that's an amazing story, because I think a lot of brands tend to think about the vanity metrics. Even when it comes to podcasts, they would think about the views. They would think about like how many listeners they would have. How do you think this is important at the very first stage? Do we have to straight away think about the vanity metrics and these kind of outcomes, or the potential business opportunities that are coming out of the conversations are much higher, for example, as an outcome?
But it depends really what you want to achieve with the podcast. Some of the brands that we are working with at the moment are looking for brand awareness. Some of them are looking for company culture building. Some of them are looking for relationship building. So depending on what you're looking for, you want to place these numbers within those goals as well. If you're looking for brand awareness, then yes, you are obviously keen to see the number of views and listens grow. You can either stimulate that by some advertisement, or you can be patient, produce high quality content, and those numbers eventually will start growing and they will be organic. On the other side, if you're looking to build relationships with people that you are talking to, then you're really focused on them. But usually when you're really into the conversation and focused on your guest, you tend to produce a quality content.
Absolutely.
Which tends to attract people, and you end up getting I call it a side effect of getting a lot of listenership as well. So I guess that's what I think about it.
So what would be the one or two words that you would say are key about podcasts?
Starting, getting that first episode, consistency.
I was thinking about consistency.
Just keep recording. Keep
doing
recording.
That.
Yeah. Just keep recording, because everything else will follow. The hardest part about starting a podcast is starting to record. But after that, like everything follows. When you have the materials in your hand, you'll know what to do with that.
So I think you also get hooked about the energy that is being created during the conversation. So I think this is something very powerful.
Well, it does, because I really think that, and I say this to all of the guests that come in, that I wouldn't be able to ask them the questions that I'm asking them now if we just met on the street.
Right.
But this is podcast is a great platform to accelerate the relationship, the level of your relationship by 10x. Because
Brilliant.
probably for me to ask you these questions would take me at least to see you a couple of times and then ask you about, some personal questions about your life, what you're scared of, or what was the hardest thing about your life, and blah, blah, blah. So I think it's really a wonderful way to meet people.
That is great, Vuk. I wanted to mention something else. There's great marketers appreciate working for great CEOs who appreciate marketing. So there's a saying, the life is too short to work for a CEO who doesn't appreciate marketing. So I have an impression that you're a CEO who appreciates the great and bold moves in marketing, who would probably encourage his key marketer to be brave in suggesting things like that.
No, absolutely. 100%. And I think that, having a great service or a product or any value that you're trying to sell out there is not going to work without marketing. I'm not a fan of... I always like to hack things and try, not to repeat everything that everyone else is doing and try to kind of trick the system. So I always appreciated people who were coming up with the ideas. So how can they do that? But 100% spot on, marketing is the essential part of the business, and the one who can figure that part out, which is then followed by sales as well. No matter what type of product or service you give it to them, they will manage to scale it.
Brilliant. And I hope the audience that is listening to this episode will find it absolutely valuable, because you're a CEO, you're also a person who has done marketing, you're also a person who has risked or probably managed to invest into something bold to scale up during the moment of uncertainty, which was 2020. And I think this is totally valuable for those who are in the same probably position currently, to take an example to go ahead with this. I've got a couple of personal questions that I want to probably finish our episode with, and I'm hoping you'll find sort of an energy to answer them. So, what are your biggest fears?
My biggest fears? So, I grew up in the country that went through a very difficult time, and I think that there's a lot of other people who are coming from similar countries. I have that fear of not being, what's the right term to say it, safe or
secure
not
all the time.
Secure all the time. And I grew up with that feeling, and I'm living in the country which is not helping me work on that. But that's probably one of the fears that I have: security.
I know what you're talking about. Absolutely. So, what makes you angry?
What makes me angry?
Yes. What makes you really angry?
A lot of things are making me angry.
That's interesting. So, but I think that's something that we have just put it out there. Mm. We are talking about the backstage anyway.
What makes me angry? People makes me angry. No, I don't know really. We'll have to go deep to come up with the answer for that. I'm very patient with some stuff, but then I'm not patient with a lot of other stuff as well. So standing still and not making a progress maybe it doesn't make me angry, but makes me feel very anxious, whether that's personal or in business. So standing still makes me anxious, which makes me angry.
Okay. Yeah, I got your point. That's true. That's absolutely true. I agree with you. And if you had a chance to speak to someone or like a third power, a magic, let's say, so what would you ask for?
What would I ask for? The older I'm getting, the more mature I'm getting, I'm realizing really that the only thing that you really need in life are people around you that you can share your life with. So, happiness, fulfillment, and fun and good times with people around you and your family.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much for being so open today. I think I've learned a lot about you, and I'm sure the audience who has been actually listening to your podcast will benefit as well to know you more from personal perspective, and also you as a businessman. Really happy to collaborate. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Larissa, and I enjoyed, and good luck with your podcast. And I'm really looking forward to see how you progress.
Thank you.